Choosing between creative job and real job, parents are pushing towards nursing, AI affecting art jobs. Nursing's not a bad one, honestly. I actually mentioned this yesterday. Somebody asked, they said, I don't know how to code what kind of jobs will be improving, what kind of jobs will be, the market for them will be improving rather than deteriorating, which is a hard question to answer. But one of them was nursing for a couple of reasons. It's non-algorithmic. What you do on a day-to-day basis is very hard to consolidate into a simple set of instructions because it's going to be very different on different days. Two, it requires human empathy. So it's a human to human interface, and you need to sometimes calm people down. You need to make people feel less scared, etc. Humans are still better at that. And three, it's physical. Robotics is still very far behind artificial intelligence or generative AI specifically. So until robotics catches up, physical jobs are still safer. So nursing is a combination of those three, not just nursing, but anything to do with the care profession. So this could be working in a nursing home, this could be social work. A lot of caring professions still require these three elements: non-algorithmic, empathy-based, and physical, which means they're going to be, at least for now, safer than white collar jobs. So anything that where you're basically sitting at a computer, filling in an Excel sheet and doing the same thing day in, day out, not necessarily talking to people, and you're at a computer, that's the stuff that's at risk. So that's why white collar jobs are going to be more at risk than something like nursing. But choosing between a creative job and a real job, parents are pushing nursing. This is for you personally, Ronald. AI affecting art jobs. I would say the problem with art jobs is art has always been a hard way to make money. So I'm talking not just of pure art, but also the creative industries like market advertising, fashion photography, etc., that which have more money, but it's always been a hard way to make money. So AI, I think, accelerates that by making a lot of the kind of entry roles obsolete because it can help with a lot of the basic stuff. So I think the creative industry is going to be increasingly tough. It's already difficult. It has been difficult for decades. I think it's going to get even harder. So by all means, pursue a creative outlet. Absolutely do that. But I think it's more and more difficult to rely on that as your primary source of income, unfortunately, which is a shame. That's one of the uses of AI I'm not very excited about. I do love human creativity and human art, but the economics of the situation is most art and most kind of advertising companies and marketing companies and fashion photography shoots, etc. Most of the stuff they do is workaday stuff. It's just stuff to pay the bills. And that's what AI is going to be coming for. So we tend to think of art as the things in the galleries, etc. That's not really where the money is. The money is in the everyday stuff, doing commercial work for companies generally, for better or worse. And that is going to be taken by AI, which is going to remove the ability and the freedom and the space to do more highbrow art, pure creativity for the sake of creativity. So what I would do personally, I would have a job or a business which allows me an income. Ideally, allows me to get that income within 3 to 4 days a week. So I have extra days to work on my art on the side. I think that's probably the balance. Artists have been doing this for years already. I think with AI, this is going to be even more the case. Trying to make money from the art is going to become difficult. But if you free up your time and have time just to create, without the expectation that it needs to pay the bills and it needs to put food on the table, I think that's probably going to be the sensible way forward, what your art is and what your skills are. But generally, I would say that's probably the way to go. Ronald says, thank you. I guess creative industries will continue to contract and be hard to be in. Yeah, I don't see any other way. As I said before, they were already difficult. They're a good way to live because not everything's about money, but make money and survive and buy a house. And I don't know where you live, but if you live in somewhere like London, where I am, it's just very expensive just to exist, just to go out the door and have a coffee and a sandwich. Suddenly I'm like, oh, where's that money gone? So depending on what lifestyle you want, what quality of life, how much cash you need, the creative industry is going to become more and more difficult. That said, maybe you are remote, maybe you're living in a low cost country. That's what I did for most of my 20s. I would live primarily in Asia and make money in America. So there's an arbitrage opportunity there. Yes, you could absolutely be a creative, but if you are living in a city like London as a creative trying to get by, it's going to be hard. That's all. It doesn't mean that shouldn't be your path because everyone has different priorities. But in terms of financial, purely financial, it will be difficult, unfortunately. Do you think AI will lead to mass unemployment, or will the government step in? This is a big question. So I think the next 10, 15, maybe 20 years are going to be messy. I don't think there's any way around that because industries are going to be reshuffled. And right now, our governments, they don't really know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing generally. So to throw something into the mix like artificial intelligence is asking a lot of them. So there are talks about things like UBI, universal basic income, and those discussions are not even being had at the government level. So I think there's a lot of burying of the heads in sand. I often talk about China and how China is a bit different. I lived in China for quite a while. China are thinking about these things. Our Western, I'm going to start promoting communism here, but our Western governments tend to think in very short time horizons of 3 to 4 years, basically when the next election is. What that means is it's very hard to do long-term planning. And something like artificial intelligence and working out how we're going to deal with this, how we're going to deal with potentially the undermining of multiple industries, the undermining of capitalism, because if people aren't earning money, they can't buy stuff. And if they're not buying stuff, other companies start to collapse because capitalism is kind of built on us earning money to buy stuff and then that feeding back in to pay wages. That can potentially have the bottom kicked out because if you suddenly have 20%, 25%, 30% of people unemployed, there's not any money to go back into it, into the system, into the loop. These are big questions that I don't have that much confidence in our governments being able to solve right now. I just don't think that they are forward thinking enough to be able to tackle these issues. In the UK specifically, they've made a lot of noise about AI and how it's going to take our economy into the future, but the investment is just not there. There isn't enough money to make this reasonable. We had things like a couple of weeks ago, Meta, Zuckerberg's company, who own Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. They gave a grant, or they gave £1 million to, no, $1 million, I think it was, even less, to the UK government to invest in artificial intelligence, and had a big ceremony, and it was on the front page of the BBC for 1 million. So 1 million is not nothing, and Meta had no obligation to give the UK government anything at all. But the fact that they gave them 1 million, it just seems it's table scraps basically, because the very same week Zuckerberg was hiring AI engineers and giving them $100 million bonuses. So he was giving $100 million to multiple individuals, engineers, and then he gave $1 million to the UK government. And we made a big deal about it. Oh, here we go. This is our AI future. So I don't think our government knows what they're doing. Peter Kyle, who is in kind of the forefront of all of this, I think he's doing what he can, but unless there's money to put behind these technologies and to retrain people and to get access to these technologies, it doesn't really matter. We can say all we want about our AI future and our AI enabled government, etc. But it's just words. It's hot air. So when it comes to things like UBI, which is going to require immense amount of cash to be able to pull off and immense amount of finesse to make sure it doesn't collapse our society, I just don't know if they have the chops to put it off. So somewhere like China, because they are thinking 10, 20, 30 years ahead, have a better chance. But in the UK and the US, no, I don't think we can rely on them. So this is why I always tell people, and this is why I do this kind of educational content, is basically saying this is the best opportunity I've ever seen in all my years of kind of building businesses and building businesses online and helping other businesses as a consultant. This is the most opportunity filled moment. It's the time where you can build a business very quickly using the AI tools we have at our disposal. You don't need to build an AI business. You can build any business, but you can get that business up and running very quickly using artificial intelligence. So I think that's a huge opportunity at the same time. So my main recommendation is that people prepare themselves for the uncertainty that's coming by building something which allows them to generate their own income. So when I first started online businesses 20 years ago, I had to do everything. I had to build the product, I had to do customer service, build the website, do the e-commerce connections, etc. And I had to either learn all of that myself, which I did, and it took a very long time, and I didn't make any money for years, which was not ideal, or you had to hire somebody and it would be expensive. And if you didn't have cash coming in already, that was pretty tricky to do. Right now, we basically have a team of experts that we can go to. We can go to ChatGPT and say, look, I've got this business idea. What are the steps to get this done? What do I physically need to do? And you can get checklists, you can get it to help you with. And then each of those steps, it would be something like, oh, you need to make a landing page that's going to convince people to join a wait list, for example. You can go back to ChatGPT and say, hey, I need to make a waitlist landing page. Can you help me with that? What does that look like? Can you get examples of successful pages? Help me construct this. How do I build this into a website, etc.? We have an expert in our pocket, and we can use ChatGPT and other AI tools to very rapidly deploy a business. I'm building websites and tools right now with Lovable. Again, not sponsored by them. Lovable, if you're watching, happy to be sponsored by you. I do love your product, so I might as well get paid for it. But I can build now in hours, which what would have taken me weeks before, which allows me to get more things out of the door much faster and to test things out and to build my business. So it's a really exciting time if you want to go your own way and you want to carve out your own path, which I think is increasingly important because we cannot rely on our jobs, on our companies to work it out. I talk to lots of CEOs. Hopefully, none of them are watching it, but they don't really know what's going on with artificial intelligence. And I'll go into a room with a board and they'll be like, we want to do AI. That's insufficient. And so there's going to be a lot of companies who are going to flounder in the next few years because they haven't worked out what's going on. At the same time, I don't think we can rely on our governments. So increasingly, I think we need to rely on ourselves and to carve out our own space online. And thankfully, at the same time as all this chaos is happening, there are the tools that allow us to do that, which are artificial intelligence building tools. So it's scary and it's exciting at the same time. But it depends on what you want to do with these tools. But I would say do not bury your head in the sand, but instead embrace and try to build something with these things, because most people are still scared of this stuff. And if you can get a couple of years out ahead of them, build something, build a business, start helping other people, for example, you'll be in a good position. Kyle, do you feel bad for people that started learning software development in the last 5 years? No, I think it's wonderful. It's a really useful skill. So even when you are vibe coding, when you are building something using artificial intelligence, it's really helpful to know how software works. So I made a huge mistake in the last few days. So I'm building a site which is going to be for search engine optimization in order to rank on Google. And I messed up. So I built this whole thing. It's beautiful. And it's taken me a few days to build. Not massive, but it's still a lot of time, a lot of energy. And I've realized the whole thing is built with client-side rendering, which is technical, but basically for Google to be able to read the website and to index it and to show it to people on Google, it needs to be server-side rendering. So I've just made this huge architectural problem because I blindly went in, didn't do the research, made a mistake, and I've built something which is no longer fit for purpose because I basically mucked up at the beginning. So now I'm having to work out how to convert it, et cetera, et cetera. If I was a much better software developer than I am, that wouldn't have been an issue because I would have known going in to instruct my tools, my AI tools, hey, this is really important. This needs to be server-side rendering. This cannot be client-side rendering. I would have known that up front. I knew this, but I didn't know explicitly enough to tell the tool. Whereas if you have been learning software development, if you know a programming language, if you know how software is architected, is that the word? Yeah. You are in a much better position to start to use these tools as well. What I'm seeing though, which is a bit of a risk, are the people who they've spent years honing their craft as a software developer, and they see these AI tools as a threat, which they are to their jobs. So they are refusing to use them. I think that is a big mistake. I think if you can combine years and years of software development expertise with the newest AI tools that can speed you up, that puts you in a really good position. That puts you in a much better position than somebody who doesn't know the first thing about coding and is using a vibe coding tool, because they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have insecure software, for example. And it puts you in a better position than the coders who refuse to use these tools as well. So if you can combine the two, perfect. You're in a really good position. And I envy you. So 5 years of software development learning, that puts you in a great position. How much of a role do you think AI played in poor US job numbers? Oh yeah, this was now remind me, it was about new jobs, wasn't it? Let me put it up. And didn't he fire he fired the, sorry. You don't like the statistics, you fire her. So here we go. Trump axes the labor statistics chief after his poor jobs report. I believe the numbers were phony, so I fired her. So this poor lady, Erica Muckentaffer, was confirmed by the Republican-led Senate in an 86 to 8 vote last year. And she's just been fired because the statistics that she returned, which is her job, showed that the economy only added 73,000 jobs in July. So here we go. President Donald Trump fired the chief labor statistician after the Bureau of Labor Statistics released its monthly job report showing that the economy only added 73,000 jobs in July. The numbers come the same day that Trump resumes his global tariffs. So this was last Friday. Hours later, Trump criticized Erica McIntyre, I'm going to say that wrong, sorry, the commissioner for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, implying she could not be trusted because former President Joe Biden nominated her. We need accurate jobs numbers, he posted. I have directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately, all caps. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. Important numbers like these must be fair and accurate. They can't be manipulated for political purposes. Oh, God. He is funny sometimes. So he's saying these numbers need to be non-political, and he fired her when he didn't like the numbers. Okay, it's beautiful. It's awful and horrifying and terrifying, but you can't make this up. So yeah, so the normal number of jobs added, I think it's about 150. Yeah, here we go. About 150,000. So the report showed that the unemployment rate of 4.2% ticked up slightly, but even more damning, the Bureau also downwardly revised the number of jobs added in May from 144,000 jobs to only 19,000 jobs, while it revised the number of jobs added in June from 147,000 to 14,000, 90% decrease. So I think, I don't know, without looking at it in more detail, I don't know whether this is caused by AI. However, let's see, there's probably a mention of AI. So a lot of companies right now, CEOs are doing job reductions. They're removing staff, and they're saying AI is the reason. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. They probably just overhired, and now that the economy is in a bit of a dumpster fire, although when hasn't it been recently, they are using AI as a nice convenient excuse, because that's a nice way to, sorry, it's a good way for them as the leaders to be able to cut jobs without admitting that they're not growing the company. So generally when you're cutting jobs, that makes your company look weak, because, oh, you can't afford to keep these people on. What's going on? There's something wrong with the company. So that's a very bad signal for the stock market and for the investors. And the investors who are in their company would be like, oh, what's going on? We don't have confidence in your leadership. Why are you cutting these jobs? Does that mean we're not growing? Why don't you have enough money? So AI is a really good excuse if you have an overinflated headcount and you need to cut them without seeming weak as a leader, because you can cut those jobs now and you can say, oh, it's because of our AI efficiencies. So we've dropped 1,000 jobs because AI. So that allows you to put on this performance almost that we're losing these jobs because we don't have the money to pay them, but oh, we're still keeping the same efficiencies in place because we have artificial intelligence. So it's a nice narrative. A bit further down the line, somebody might, 6 months down the line, somebody will notice, oh, but our revenue figures are falling. The company doesn't seem to be doing as well. And then you can say, oh, we've had some trouble integrating our AI into the systems, or whatever it is, or you can just blame it on the economy. So I think it's being used as a convenient excuse right now, which skews the numbers. What I think is interesting, though, is the mechanism I think that AI is going to disrupt the labor market is not by causing people to be fired, because firing somebody and replacing them with an AI is still quite difficult. Our agentic systems aren't good enough, basically. They might be, but they're not yet. So I think most of those firings, if somebody's directly fired and AI is the cause, that's probably just a nice, easy cover. What I think is more dangerous for the labor market, though, is the non-creation of new jobs. So we've seen this at graduate schemes, for example, in the Big Four. We're seeing this in legal firms, in professional firms, where the intake of new people coming in is being decreased because the same number of people coming in can now do more work because of artificial intelligence. I think this is the dangerous part. And this actually aligns with this report from Erica, where it's less jobs are being created. I think this is how AI is going to undercut labor markets. So it's not direct firing, but just not creating new jobs in the first place. So that aligns with my theory here. I don't know. I'd have to look into the data, and we probably won't know for another couple of years what's actually going on. Everything will shake out, and we'll be able to look back in hindsight at this kind of movement and be like, oh, yeah, that was definitely AI. But I think right now it's really hard to unpick this kind of data. So potentially. So it's not a very definitive answer, but I think maybe AI is going to undercut new jobs, and this could be happening already in this report, but it's hard to tell. Or maybe Trump's right and she's making up figures. I don't think that's the case.